Hi, my name is Father Ziggy Morawiec. I'm working in the seminary of Priest of Sacred Heart. This is my fourth year of my job here. The last 3 years I was working as the vice rector of the seminary, and this year, right now, I am a formator of our SCJ students. Fratelli Tutti, a long document presented by Pope Francis, 8 chapters, 45,000 of words. I tried to summarize the most important topics of this document in 5 points. My first point would be the situation of the human person in the contemporary world. Pope Francis started this first chapter saying that every generation needs to work to achieve a next stage in human, social, political, and religious development of humanity based on what has been done by previous generations. Each new generation must take up the struggles and attainments of past generations by setting its sights even higher. We need to set our goals higher, further. On this way, there are many obstacles and difficulties. One of them, Pope Francis describes as the end of historical consciousness. Another one is the contemporary force of enslavement. When we speak about enslavement, contemporary forms of enslavement of human person, the basic point on it is this: it happens always, only then, when we negate the personal dignity of human person, the dignity that is rooted in being created as image and on likeness of God Himself. If this fundamental truth is negated, it opens the way for different forms of enslavement and of different forms of treating the human persons as objects, which can never be accepted. Speaking about contemporary forms of enslavement, Pope Francis mentioned a very important question in our times, which is the using of social media. He entitled "The Illusion of Communication." And he says digital media can also expose people to the risk of addiction, isolation, and a gradual loss of contact with concrete reality. The lack of physical gestures, facial expressions, moments of silence, body language, and even the smells, the trembling of hands, the blushes, perspiration. The parable of Good Samaritan tells us the story about the man who was assaulted by thieves, and many people passed by him. No one wanted to stop. Everyone was busy except this one whom we call Good Samaritan. He helped the man who was in need, and he gave him something even more important than physical help. He gives him his attention, and he gives him the precious gift of time. It is what we need in our frenetic world of our times: attention to other person and readiness to offer our time. By his actions, the Good Samaritan showed that the existence of each and every individual is deeply tied to that of others. Life is not simply time that passes. Life is a time of interactions. Human beings are so made that they cannot live, develop, and find fulfillment except in the sincere gift of self to others. Saint Benedict, in his rule of life, teaches us that poor and pilgrims should be treated always with great attention, because hospitality is one specific way of rising to the challenge and the gift present in an encounter with those outside one's own circle. This teaching of Saint Benedict is very dear to us, sons of Father Deon, who teaches us that hospitality is one of the most important elements of our charism. Solidarity, it means thinking and acting in terms of community. Solidarity, understood in its most profound meaning, is a way of making history. The spirit of solidarity brings us to another element of Pope's teaching, which is the social role of property. John Paul II tells us that God gave the earth to the whole human race for the sustenance of all its members. The principle of the common use of created goods is the first principle of the whole ethical and social order. Our response to the arrival of migrating persons can be summarized by 4 words: welcome, protect, promote, and integrate. Point 3. A new vision of politics. And I just like to describe the content of this point with 1 word: tenderness. He says, it must never be forgotten that loving the most insignificant of human beings as a brother, as if there were no one else in the world but him, cannot be considered a waste of time. What is tenderness? It is love that draws near and becomes real. War and death penalty. Pope Francis says, every war leaves our world worse than it was before. We can no longer think of war as a solution because its risk will probably always be greater than its supposed benefits. In view of this, it is very difficult nowadays to invoke the rational criteria elaborated in earlier centuries to speak of the possibility of a just war. St. John Paul II stated clearly and firmly that death penalty is inadequate from a moral standpoint and no longer necessary from that of penal justice. Pope Francis himself speaks very clearly. The death penalty is inadmissible and the Church is firmly committed to calling for its abolition worldwide. Religion and violence. Sincere and humble worship of God bears fruit not in discrimination, hatred, and violence, but in respect for the sacredness of life, respect for the dignity and freedom of others, and loving commitment to the welfare of all. The truth is that violence has no basis in our fundamental religion's convictions, but only in their distortions. The Church is a home with open doors because she is a mother. And in imitation of Mary, the mother of Jesus, we want to be a church that serves, that leaves home and goes forth from its places of worship, goes forth from its sacristies in order to accompany life, to sustain hope, to be the sign of unity, to build bridges, to break down walls, to sow seeds of reconciliation. Our founder always invited us to go forth to the places of the cities, to lift sacristies. And in our rule of life, in point 7, we read, Father Deon expected his religious to be prophets of love and servants of reconciliation of people and the world.